We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you, Richard Johnson, for being here with me today. I'm Alex Kirshner. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing well. We're hanging in there. We're living in a storage unit right now, a temporary storage unit, but we're making it work.
Yes, you are moving, and you had someone move into your apartment just so that you could then move out of the apartment, both of you?
If you have ever lived in New York and understand how leases line up, or in this case, do not line up at times, you know where I'm getting at. You know what I'm talking about.
Worst cities to move in, I'll give it to you. It's got to be New York.
Has to be.
I can't imagine.
I have moved across the country before, from Florida to Connecticut, and would rather do that than move the intraborough, the mile or so that I am currently about to move.
Oh, yeah. All those walk-up apartments that you got to lug bed frames down and then find a place to park the U-Haul.
Brother, I won't be lugging a damn thing. I won't be U-Hauling a damn thing. I'm 31 years old, baby. Look, pay for the movers. I'm sure everybody older than us has already wised up, but this is now my second mover move, and we will never go back, ever.
No, there is no going back. We paid for movers when we moved across the country, and that was the first time that we had done that after sort of having a friends communal moving organization.
No more. No time.
And the problem with the friends communal moving organization is that I wasn't a very good movie. And like people would come over to help us move, and I would still have like a closet not packed, and they'd have to wait for me. And so at some point I was just abusing that too much, and it was time to just get professional help. There's a lot of areas where I could use professional help, I suppose. Moving, that was definitely one of them. But good luck to you.
We'll make it. We will overcome.
Richard, you are in a way going into the transfer portal, but nobody else in college football is going into the transfer portal for the time being because the April.
Don't write it off. Don't write it off. The May surprise can happen.
He's right. There can be a coaching change, and the portal can open back up for players from that school. But for the most part, the transfer portal is closed until the season, and we have, I would say, a 90%, 95+% probably idea of what the rosters are going to look like when toe meets leather in September. Even if I think this year it might be August. I think the first Saturday is in August this year because of the way that Labor Day falls. So we are not going to do here in these early days of May a complete season preview, but that process has begun for us now of starting to really dig in, hone in on what we're going to see on the field, because there's a lot less guesswork involved, and we can say with a reasonably high degree of confidence that a player who is on a team today will be on that team come the end of August, the beginning of September. Who do we feel good about? Who do we feel bad about? Who should have a very optimistic offseason, and who should have a very pessimistic, angsty next 4 months? Today, we're going to chart the agenda for the rest of this offseason, the rest of talking season, and do our best to handicap what we know now about a whole big handful of teams in college football. I'm looking forward to it. It's a good chance to talk ball. Quick podcast business, though, before we get into that. Richard, Homefield has put out an Indy 500 line of all kinds of clothing, like jackets, shirts, hats, etc. And I don't think I've ever been jonesing as much as I am to appropriate Midwestern culture from the coasts as I am with this Homefield Indy 500 collection. The race is later this month, Memorial Day, as always. Have you gotten a look at these bad boys?
I have. They've had an entire racing month. Obviously, the Hendrick Motorsports partnership that they debuted back in April was fantastic. I believe I saw one Spencer Hall wearing the Jeff Gordon Rainbow Warrior jacket. Fantastic work by the folks at Homefield, as usual.
You know, Jeff Gordon was my favorite NASCAR driver as a kid. I actually did have one, and it was Jeff Gordon.
Okay. All right. See, if Godfrey was here, he would talk about some hipster bullshit and fucking talk about how we don't know anything about NASCAR, when clearly both of us have played NASCAR Thunder 2004.
Yeah, I can't claim to know much about NASCAR, but I liked Jeff Gordon as a kid. I want to say that he did like some Nickelodeon cameo sometime, and I liked the jacket. The jacket was iconic, and that's why I knew him. But anyway, yeah, that jacket is at Home Field now, which is pretty sweet. And there's a ton at Home Field. And if you go to homefieldapparel.com and you use the promo code SCD20, you get 20% off your first order at Home Field. Thanks so much to them for their long-standing partnership with this show. Also, Richard, Nokian Tires is a proud partner of the show, and we are a proud partner of theirs. Funny story, last week, my tire pressure monitor was really acting up and was telling me that I had like not just a flat, but like a rapidly flattening flat, like one of those, oh shit, you're not going to make it home.
Like there's a nail, like there's a nail in it kind of flat.
Right. Like that sort of flat. And I pull off and I'm kind of like concerned, what has gone on here? Like, have I had a tire malfunction? And the tire pressure monitor just kept freaking out. And it was freaking out so much that I called AAA because you get 4 calls a year. You might as well use them. And I get there and the nice guy from AAA takes a look at the tire and he's like, there's no problem with this tire. And of course there was no problem with this tire. It was completely a tire pressure monitor problem on my Mazda. I have, in the 2 years that I've been driving on my set of Nokian tires, I think I've only had to even put air in them like 3 or 4 times maximum. Like they're just incredibly solid in terms of the way that they retain air, which is really one of the number one things a tire has to do if you think about it, retaining air. And in this case, even when I briefly lost faith because of my tire pressure monitor, turned out that the Nokians were taking care of me the way that they always do. I apologize for even thinking that there could have been something wrong.
Yeah, imagine that.
Just terrible. I'll never do it again. And also, I want to tell you about splitzoneduo.com, the home of this podcast on Substack, where you can get premium episodes, Q&A opportunities for Stephen Godfrey's Single Wing episodes, newsletters, community engagement opportunities like live chats during the season, all kinds of fun things, early tickets, discounted tickets, and early tickets to our live shows when we do those. That is all at splitzoneduo.com. And I have an exciting episode that I'm looking forward to putting out this week there, actually, about a different angle to the Iowa and Iowa State betting scandal that came about over the course of the last year. Really looking forward to sharing that with our subscribers at splitzoneduo.com. Richard, the 2024 season, it's not upon us, but it's approaching. And I think we've both been kind of marinating on different teams that we feel good, bad, interested in over the past few months. But before you can really get into the take merchant business, you need to make sure that the roster doesn't change dramatically after spring ball. And I think now we can forge ahead. I want to begin, and we're going to alternate throughout the show in sharing thoughts about teams that we have some conclusion about at this point. And I want to start in Blacksburg, Virginia. Richard, can I pitch you on Virginia Tech good this year?
You sure can. I think you're sure about to.
I am about to. I've prepared a whole spiel for you about my belief in Virginia Tech this year. Been a rough few years. Been a rough, the better part of 20 years, if we're really being honest about it. But I would say in particular, been a rough last decade. It's been a rough last decade. Since the run of double-digit win seasons ended in 2011 when they went 11-3 under Frank Beamer. There was the rough last half decade or so of Frank Beamer. There was brief hope under Justin Fuente, who won 10 games his first year. That then went gradually and then rapidly downhill. Brent Pry's first year was I don't know that I would give it. I'm not going to give it a year 0 designation, but it was ugly. It wasn't good. They went 3-8. It was the worst Virginia Tech team of either of our lifetimes. And I think the worst Virginia Tech team of anyone's lifetime who was born, anyone under the age of like 37 right now. That was the worst Virginia Tech team of their lifetime. So I think that it was easy to be pretty skeptical of Virginia Tech, particularly when they started last season by continuing to look pretty far down in the dumps. They lost to Purdue and they lost to Rutgers and they lost to Marshall. They were 1-3. The Marshall team that had beaten them was the team that Tech had taken their quarterback, Grant Wells, the year before. So it was just ugly. I think very quietly, Virginia Tech had one of the better last 2/3 of the seasons of any team in the country last year. They wound up getting to the Military Bowl, winning that game, a 7-win season, They had the emergence of a legitimate dual threat quarterback in Kyron Drones, who, unlike Grant Wells, is not interception addicted and gives them a number in the run game and seems to have been a really nice fit for everything that they were trying to do offensively. He's playing again this year. Bashal Tootin, the running back, is a good player. He's there as well. They're returning their entire offensive line. Granted, it was not a very good offensive line, and they gave up, in one of the funniest stats of spring, 13 combined sacks between the two offenses in the Virginia Tech spring game I saw. So there are questions, and I think it is reasonable to wonder exactly how good that offense is going to be. But I think, led by Kyron Drones, with at least experience, if not amazing experience on the offensive line, I think that they're going to be a pretty solid unit. And I tend to trust Brent Pry defensively. That is what he majored in at Penn State. Well, it's what he's majored in his entire career. It's been the better unit of his first couple of years in Blacksburg. And also, Richard, I'm not going to do this the entire episode, but this schedule game for Virginia Tech is pretty enticing. It's Vanderbilt, Marshall, Old Dominion, which, as you know, Tech fans can be a problem. Rutgers.
It sure can. I mean, like one of the weirdest offenses in college football, by the way.
Old Dominion. I'm interested to hear about that. And that's actually, at this point, that is an ex-Penn State meetup between Ricky Ronnie and Brent Pry. But I assume, I believe, I'm not going to assume, but I think that Virginia Tech will not lose to Old Dominion again in Norfolk this year. That has happened twice. Last year, Tech beat them up pretty good. Let's assume
0-2 in Norfolk for the lads.
Is it 0-2? It's not even 1-2.
It might be 1-2.
Yeah. The point is, it hasn't been good. That's a game that they play, I think, pretty much like to please their alumni in the area and to get a little, recruiting exposure in the famous Tidewater area that gets brought up on the show so much. I don't think they signed up for that series thinking that they would lose multiple games in Norfolk, but happens. But let's say that they don't lose that game this year. Vanderbilt, Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers, that's the start. They play Miami, Stanford, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Clemson, Duke, UVA. You'll notice no Louisville on there, no Florida State on there. It's a pretty favorable falling schedule in the ACC for Tech this year. And as long as they can avoid an Old Dominion problem, I think they got a pretty good chance to be 4-0 going into Miami at the end of September. It wouldn't shock me if Tech had a season this year that was reminiscent of Louisville's season last year, especially with the 12-team playoff. Like, it wouldn't stun me if Virginia Tech was the team that, in some part due to a relatively light schedule, you looked at them in November and you were like, like this team playing in the playoff is a non-zero possibility. I think that we could have a fun, optimistic, forward-looking Virginia Tech season. What say you?
I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm taking the information in. Nothing you've said has taken me too far afield. I'm rocking with you. I'm picking up with what you're putting down here.
All right, we'll take it. I want you to just keep an eye, everybody, on the Virginia Tech story this year. I think it could be a fun bounce back for a program that is fun when it's good. And it's kind of fun even when it isn't good because of the atmosphere in Lane Stadium. So I hope we get it. Richard, take me.
Yeah,
give me your take.
I will be. This take is not unique. I think a lot of people, plenty of people are going to have it. And I think you've probably heard me on this show walk pretty close up to it. First of all, I think Ohio State's going to win the national championship. And I don't think just win the national championship. I think this Ohio State team has a chance to be one of the better teams in the playoff era. If you look at this roster, what I am most interested about on defense is that, and Michigan did this to an extent last year, actually, funny enough. I think we are in right now, because of all the portal extra years and yada, yada, yada. I think we are in the time where old teams have a decided advantage over younger ones, more so than you might think, as all these COVID years finally rinse out. It's sort of the college basketball thing, right? Where if you have an old team with good guards, you can win the national championship. Hi, UConn, even the 7-foot or whatever. But I think Ohio State has that on defense. This is an old ass defense, man. They're all redshirt juniors, grad transfer seniors, been there a long time. It was perfectly fine last year. And then, oh, by the way, they added one of probably the best defensive player in college football last year. And one of the best players, irrespective of position in college football, at Caleb Downs at safety.
He's like the only underclassman who's going to play on that defense.
Right. And he's probably the best player on the team.
Yeah. Also, did you realize that JT is back again? You're right. Like he wasn't.
Yes.
I don't think that registered for me.
No, but that's the thing. Like
but why is he still in college football?
Well,
what's happening there?
Because he's a little stiff and can't really bend around the edge for NFL purposes. But I'll take him on this team. Like, and this is a roster. I don't want to say without any holes, because the offensive line, my jury is a touch out on the offensive line. I can be fair about that. But there's just like, where the holes at? Jeremiah Smith is what he is billed to be as a wide receiver one, which is he's a freshman that they got from South Florida, and they're saying he looks a lot like number 18 that now plays for the Arizona Cardinals. So you've got him, Carnell Tate, who a lot of people said was a really good prospect, and then Emeka Egbuka as your slot guy coming back again, old. Emeka Egbuka's a redshirt junior. Like this is a really, really loaded football team. I am fascinated to see what offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, remember that? Offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, what he can do in the run game. Because remember, they got Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judson. The running back room was so stacked that Dallin Hayden, who's a good player, had to leave. I think he's at Colorado, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe that's correct. So look, all good. Can I pitch you on a potential source of chaos with this team?
Please.
Just one? Because you got to look for them, and that's what we're going to do with these good teams.
Well, especially this one. You got to find. This is a find the hole situation.
Yeah. You and I were both at the Rose Bowl together last year. We had a lovely day, one of the better days in the history of our friendship. Remember the Alabama center who couldn't snap the ball to Jalen Milroe without putting it in his feet?
Yes, I do. He's Ohio State.
You know where he is? You know what he's doing? Yep, that's right.
Seth McLaughlin is Ohio State center. Which, that's the if there is a question mark on this team, it is offensive line beyond a shadow of a doubt. I am willing to hitch the wagon to say that they can get the run game going well enough to take a lot of pressure off pass blocking situations and Will Howard. Will Howard, transferring from Kansas State, is a good quarterback. I do not love him when he is pressured, though have not loved him when he is pressured. Okay, Tom Brady sucks when he gets pressured up the middle. It happens. So, yes, that is one thing Ohio State is going to have to figure out. It is the question mark around this team, I think, to be fair. But everywhere else, there isn't a hole. There is depth aplenty. It's old. It's tenured. It's long in the tooth. I am, it's a lukewarm take, but yeah, man, I'm hitching the wagon to Ohio State over Georgia, over Oregon, over Texas. Like that's the one this year. And I think it's not just good playoff contender. It's, I think, potentially the best playoff team of the playoff era when all is said and done. I don't know if we're going to get 2019 LSU adjacent, because I don't know if they're going to have that much firepower on offense. But when you look at complete teams, and you stack up 2019 LSU, you stack up that Georgia team a few years ago, that was a complete team with a stalwart defense. I think this is a complete and balanced football team that's going to play at a really high level.
I'm with you. I think it's a reasonable take to plant the Ohio State National Championship flag, and I like that you're doing it because, frankly, if you don't, like Ryan Day, man, like it's going to be out of our hands at that point. If they are underwhelming this year, there will be nothing left to say if they do not deliver with the kind of players that they have on this team this year. Also, you didn't even mention the quarterback, Will Howard, but I think he's pretty good.
I think he's pretty good. I did mention Will Howard.
Oh, sorry.
You're Kansas State for it.
Excuse me. Yes, he is. We'll talk about Kansas State as well in this program. Richard, I am planting another flag that I think this is the year that things get gnarlier, like even gnarlier at Clemson. I think it could be a bad scene.
How bad? Tell me what bad looks like.
Like another 8-4, which is way worse than the first one. Or like, I mean, even another 9-3 would be like, damn, you guys are no longer even close to being one of the premier programs in college football. And remember that they start with Georgia, a game that 2 or 3 years ago was a very exciting debut for the season, but isn't really now, and is not a game where I think they're going to be competitive.
Oh, they're going to get their
Florida
asses stomped in that game.
They play Florida State on the road this year. I mentioned Virginia Tech. That game is in Blacksburg. They have some losable games, even if you do not consider them to be kind of going into the tank the way that they've been. But Richard, this is the problem with Clemson. For a really mid team that didn't threaten anyone last year, they lost the most great players of any mid team you've ever seen in college football ever. Like, if you just think about the individual guys who were on this team who are no longer on this team, you'd be like, oh, wow, that must have been like a playoff team last year. And it didn't work that way. But Andrew Makuba, the safety, and the guy who I think your NFL friends, Richard, probably think is going to be one of the top 3 or 4 DBs taken next year, he plays for Texas now. Nate Wiggins, first-round pick in the NFL. Sheridan Jones in that secondary, good player there, UDFA. He's in the NFL now. Jalen Phillips, also a UDFA. They got 3 NFL players, granted only one of them was a high pick, from that secondary who are gone. Duke Orahoro, second-round pick defensive tackle, gone. Xavier Thomas, who was a 5-star who played there forever, like had an incredibly long college career where he overcame a lot, he's gone. Tyler Davis, defensive tackle, he is gone. 3 really important defensive linemen for that team, gone. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., gone. Will Shipley, gone. Bo Collins plays for Notre Dame now. How much have we talked about Clemson's wide receivers being really bad the last few years? But like the one who pretty consistently made a few plays down the field was Bo Collins.
And I don't think I shouldn't say that. I actually think Tyler Brown's pretty good. I think Tyler Brown is a slot. Yeah. I think Tyler Brown in the slot's a pretty good player. But the rest of them,
look, I can buy that. You take a highly touted player in Cade Klubnik and you put him in a second year with Garrett Riley, who look what he did with Max Duggan and Quentin Johnston and company at TCU. I can buy that things will be better there, and that you'll figure it out even with Shipley and Collins gone. Clemson has been able to develop a decent number of offensive players over the years who have kind of been plugged, been able to replace guys they've lost.
The receivers, the problem, and I think the clearest sign of the decline of Clemson, beyond the fact that they ran out of NFL quarterbacks, is the receiver room. Like, that was a wide receiver coach by trade.
Yeah.
They churned out wide receivers like they were going out of style. And that train stopped 2022-ish. And it hadn't picked up again.
There's no T. Higgins or Justin Ross or Mike Williams or Hunter Renfrow like walking necessarily right through that door. And we didn't think of Renfrow like that at the time, but he became a pretty good NFL player. Richard, we talked all of last year about how this was going to be the offseason where Dabo's going to have to change the way that he does business for Clemson to keep up with the times. They did not add a transfer in the offseason.
I think they added a couple, if I'm
they did not portal anybody.
Oh, boy.
0 players.
Oh, boy.
And I don't think it's that they didn't try, but you get what you get. And, like, explain to me why 3 years from now, Clemson fans are not going to be desperate for this guy to retire. Like, this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. I'm just saying, like, everyone has respect for what this guy's built there. He's won 2 national championships. He's been in a bunch more playoffs. He has built a great run there. But if you were going to, like, make a checklist of what it looks like when a thing is going irrevocably in the wrong direction, well, you've got falling behind the times in terms of your program management. You've got brain drain with your assistants leaving. By the way, we didn't even talk about the defense. They lost all those guys. Brett Venables lives in Oklahoma now. He's not coming to help. You've got a rival in your conference, at least for now, overtaking you, much as Clemson did, by the way. Florida State's pulled back ahead of them. Remember, like 2015, when that flipped? That was when things flipped, and that was when Clemson took over the ACC. You've got once big strengths of the program no longer being strengths. It just looks like it's over. It looks like the lights are out here. And I'm not saying they're going to be going 5-7 going forward, but the fact that they wound up with nothing coming in the portal is insane to me. And it's another like small freshman class, a bunch of blue chips, of course. They recruit well, but they don't recruit big. Like they recruit small, kind of bespoke classes, oftentimes, just kind of the way that it's worked out for them. I can think of a handful of years where Clemson's only taken a few players. I got big issues here. I think they are in trouble.
So
and I think that it's going to be another bad year.
So tell me what trouble is. Tell me what 7-5. Are we there?
The thing is, there's enough mid teams in the ACC that, like, even 9-3 wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah, but dude,
what I would say is that this team is not going to make the 12-team playoff. I feel pretty confident.
Yeah,
in
well,
that.
that's not that is not a take. This team went 9-4 last year and went 4-4 in the league. So they were sort of in that pack of 4-4. North Carolina went 4-4 last year, by the way, which I think I forgot. And a lot of other people forget.
I think I would pick 8-4 and 9-3 to be where this team is, and I think that it kind of completes a years long process of them transitioning from being a blue blood to playing like a blue blood to being just a above average Power 4 team. And
so that's
tough.
This is the year the backslide is supplanted, is what you're telling me.
Cemented. The year that the backslide is cemented. Yeah, no, I think so. Like if you look at this thing, why would you think that this would turn in a positive direction unless you really think there's a huge year 2 jump from Cade Klubnik?
Yes,
with one of his 2 good receivers being gone.
Yeah, I think that's the thing you have to look at, that's the cause for optimism.
I mean, it could happen. It could happen, but like remember, it's been a bit since it happened. It didn't happen with the last guy. It didn't happen with DJ Uiagalelei, and they're
going to see him. By the way, they're going to see him in Tallahassee.
They're going to see him. Actually, maybe that's a reason for optimism for Clemson is that Florida State did not have a particularly exciting succession plan for Jordan Travis. But I'm bearish on Clemson coming out of spring. I mean, I was waiting for like anything to happen for them in the spring portal window. Like that was one of the teams I would have kept my eye on and said, well, surely they're going to do something. And they did not do something.
Yeah. All right. I will take the ball from you. I think Billy Napier is going to be this year's Neil Brown, which is he's going to come in. Everybody's going to leave him for dead as far as his job perspectives are located. I am sure Florida will not be picked in the top 5, 7, 8 of the SEC. Because the SEC was 16 teams at this point in time. I'm not sure Florida will be picked as a top half SEC team next year. I'm going to do this off the top of my head. Alex, check me. Ole Miss, LSU, obviously Georgia, Alabama, Texas. That's 5.
Missouri is going to be ahead of them.
6, Tennessee 7. Okay, yes. So that's off the top of your head. Those are like the top half teams that you can name at media days will be named in the top half of the SEC. Not sure Florida makes that cut before the season. Similarly to West Virginia last year, West Virginia was picked 13th, or was it dead last? In the
I believe they were picked dead last in the Big 12 last year.
Maybe 12.
Yeah,
they used that as a rallying cry. They were a solid football team, and saved Neil's job, and they now have something to build on. Yes, the schedule. I have seen the fucking schedule. I know what it looks like. I go back to the fact, made this point on our show a couple months ago. You don't know how good that schedule is going to be just because the helmets on it look imposing all the way through. I am not, and now the back half of it. All right, okay, all right. The front half of it, it's got a Miami on it. That's got UCF on it. That's got these teams. Like the schedule or the helmets look pretty daunting, but it doesn't mean that when we get to it, those teams are actually going to end up being. It's the Colorado thing. Colorado was 3-0, and you're like, oh, all right, maybe they got something here, and then they end 3-9. Like that's or 4-8. Like sometimes the cookie crumbles that way based on how your schedule falls. And I don't really want to do the schedule game, but with Florida is the team you actually kind of have to do the schedule game because Florida's schedule is the thing everybody posts and says it's the hardest schedule on God's green earth. And some of that has to do with Florida's historic schedule for my entire life. And some of that has to do with the helmets on it. I get that. On offense, I think they have enough. Khalil Jackson and Eugene Wilson at receiver are playmakers. They can play. Graham Mertz was not their problem on offense last year. Not at all. Yes, you would like Trevor Etienne. Yeah, you would like that. But Florida's issues are the defense. Now, you hope that you get some linear progress with the secondary, because I will give you that Florida's secondary last year is as bad as I've seen it since 2007, which is, dear God, that was a horrible defense. And then what happened to that team? I'm not saying Florida's going to win the national championship this year, but
Heard it here first.
Yeah, heard it here first. But I am saying, man, I understand people are leaving this thing for dead. It seems too obvious that everybody's leaving some things for dead.
I respect that. I think that the sequencing of the schedule is the thing. You finish with Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, FSU. Yeah, it's helmets, but vibes, Richard. It's also vibes. Like, not all 7-5s or 8-4s are created equal if you end 1-4. And humans who are caught up in alumni and booster sentiment make decisions based on how things look like they're going at the end of the years. I mean, happened with Dan Mullen a couple of years ago. It wasn't like Dan Mullen's total body of work was that bad. Remember, they lost that game at Missouri at the end of that year. Things looked at the end of, I think it was 2021, like they just weren't going the right direction for them. And so they fired the guy. And I wonder if that might happen again. I'm way less confident than you, but I also acknowledge that you have your ear to the ground in Gainesville much, 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 much more closely than I do. So I'm gonna let you have this take. I will push on you on one thing though. You say like everyone's schedule is hard in the SEC and the Big Ten now.
Everyone's schedule's hard.
It is, but I think you.
Well, Florida has Miami and UCF. It's the non-con that is the difference.
Right. But I am still going to caution you against flattening your analysis of Big Ten and SEC schedules too much, because I think you're at risk of doing that. Like there's so many teams in these leagues that you're going to miss a bunch of them every year. And some years it works out in your favor and some years it doesn't. And I do not think this is one that works out in their favor.
No, it does not. Now, and I would say this about the ear to the ground. There are people in Gainesville who are going to think I'm insane because of this roster. That's fine. It's fine.
That's fine. You don't mind being seen as a little bit crazy in Gainesville, Florida. That's fine. I know it's a point of pride to tell the locals how it is. Richard, up to Manhattan, Kansas. I think Kansas State, good probably. And I want to talk about the probably. I don't mean to hedge. I think that Ohio State was pretty pleased to get Will Howard, but at the same time, K-State was not all that upset to see the way paved open for Avery Johnson to come and be their starting quarterback after he got a good deal of reps last year. The offense here for Chris Kleiman lost an absolute shit ton, headlined by the coordinator, Colin Klein, in a move that probably really stung in both symbolic and logistical senses. He's off to Texas A&M, so he leaves the alma mater, goes for the SEC job. They lost Cooper Beebe, who was the all-everything offensive lineman. They lost Ben Sinnott, who's a second-round pick tight end, who they used as like a bruising, we used to have a country-style H-back tight end.
Proper country.
Yeah, like when the ball used to be run, one of those guys. He's a throwback type of player, and they relied on him not just because he was a good player, but because he like really fit what they did and what they do under Chris Kleiman. Like I remember a couple of highlights over the last few years where like Deuce Vaughn or someone would score a touchdown and the highlight would be Sinnott or the other tight end whose name eludes me, just throwing dudes around while those tiny Kansas State running backs going for touchdowns behind them. That is what they are losing. They also had another tackle, KT Leviston, off to the NFL in the 7th round. So there is a ton gone here, but there's a talented quarterback in Avery Johnson, and it's an opportunity to like express some belief or not, but I do, in Kleiman's ability to string something together offensively.
Do I trust Chris Kleiman to find some cornbread white boy that can line up at H and throw a nickel out the paint 25 snaps a game? I'll place my chips there.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought process. Matt Wells is here now, along with Connor Riley, the offensive line coach, to run the offense. I'm not saying I'm especially excited. Like, oh, Matt Wells is running the offense now. That's great. Things are going to be fine. But it could work there. I lean towards it works okay because of how I feel about Avery Johnson, the quarterback, who's like a differently athletic guy than Will Howard. Like I think he's a little bit less of a yeah, exactly. And Howard could run, but it was sort of a between the tackles situational type thing. He's an athlete. I don't want to say he's not. I think Avery Johnson's got a little bit more electricity coursing through him as a ball carrier than Will Howard did. And it's just a matter of finding those cornbread guys that you're talking about to replace the Cooper Beebes, the Ben Sinnets. I think they're going to be okay, but we'll see. And defensively, they return a ton from what was already a pretty good unit last year.
Yeah,
it was 33rd in SP+.
Yeah, it's like the oldest defense in college football. I mean, go take a look at that. I will say this about that offense. I am, like you mentioned, one Deuce Vaughn. I'm pretty excited for Dylan Edwards in that offense. I'm pretty excited for
and DJ Giddens.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the explosive element that Dylan Edwards can give you as a change of pace back, both receiving out of the backfield and as a running back. I don't think Dylan Edwards is churning out 3 yards of cloud of dust, Ollie Gordon style on 32 carries, but is he a guy who can get you an explosive play when you need one? Yeah, man. Yeah.
Very much so. And I think that the most exciting thing that you can hope for is that Dylan Edwards and DJ Giddens kind of recreate what Deuce Vaughn and DJ Giddens were doing. I mean, Deuce was the primary guy, but Deuce is a little guy, little, quick, shifty, very hard to get your hands around. I think it's the same thing with Dylan Edwards, whereas you get a little bit more thunder than lightning with DJ Giddens. It's enticing to me. I think I'm more than intrigued. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that if right now you made me pick a new Big 12 champion this year, you made me do it, I think I'd strongly consider Kansas State. I have to think through it in a little bit more detail, but I'm bullish. Richard.
Jalen Daniels. Kansas is staying in the Sunflower State. Jalen Daniels going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. I think that we sort of all forget about him, which deservedly so. And yes, this take is solely predicated on his health. He's got to stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, it is what it is. But I think Jalen Daniels gives you the non-obvious dual threat quarterback thread of the needle that I think a Heisman race needs when you don't have a number one with a bullet Heisman guy coming in. Off the top of your, like, who are sort of a couple guys who you, obviously Carson Beck. I'm lower on Quinn Ewers than I think the rest of the world is. And then Ollie Gordon as a running back. But so who else off the top of your head jumps off the top?
Yeah. The tough one is that I would say one of the Ohio State running backs, but there's two of them.
And they split.
Which creates a problem for both Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Actually the thought crossed my mind, like, could you get like a freshman Larry Fitzgerald situation with either Jeremiah Smith or like Cam Coleman at Auburn?
But I don't know.
I don't know either. It's open. I am not an advocate of Heisman futures betting, by the way.
But
stock market's very good right now. Don't let the sports book hold your money interest free for.
But if you're
9 months or whatever,
if you're looking at my DraftKings account, I tell you something. I just at the odds that you're going to get him, which is hilarious. I think it's like plus like 4,000 or something. Like pretty hilarious long shot in here. But no, I'll take it. I think as a passer, Jalen Daniels is a good passer. He's a legitimately good passer. I know that offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki leaving is not awesome for Kansas.
Penn State now for him.
Yeah. I know that that's not awesome. I know that his health, Jalen Daniels' health, is not awesome. But he is an accurate thrower of the football, and he runs good enough to get you what you need there as far as highlight reel plays. And so I take it. I'll take it.
Okay. I think I can get down with that. I'm not going to get on Jalen Daniels for Heisman, but I think I can get down with that. For me, this is another bummer team for me. I think what's happened to Oregon State really sucks and is has the potential to get sad this year. They got totally wiped out in the portal after the season, courtesy of Jonathan Smith to Michigan State and also some other teams that just went shopping up and down that roster. The one bright light was that Damian Martinez, the great running back there, did not leave and looked like he was going to stick around. He did not stick around. He's a spring transfer. He's at Miami now. By the way, we talked going into the portal season about Miami needing a running back. Congrats to them. They got a running back, a really, really good one. I think that changes how I see Miami going into the season. But for Oregon State, I think it's a huge bummer to lose probably your best player, first and foremost. But I think even bigger, it's a psychological blow. Like they need rallying points right now. Like for everybody who cares about that program, as they go into a very uncertain period where for at least a little bit, they're going to be an appendage to the Mountain West, basically, while they try to reconstitute a more organized future for themselves in a conference that could be called the Pac-12. Who knows what it will be? And to lose the heart and soul guy who looked like he was going to hang around. And there have been some conflicting stories, some competing versions of events about why exactly that happened, and some finger pointing around money promises to him. And I'm not going to probe too deeply into them other than to note that they exist and that that's a discussion that's happened around this. Like it's tough. And I think that it would have been a nice middle finger opportunity for them to like have another 10-win season, which they've done recently, and to really clean up against this Mountain West schedule and, and have a chance in the Civil War against Oregon this year. And I just don't see that happening. And so it's a bummer. And I think that of all of the paths that the Oregon State season could have taken once the realignment bomb hit them, I think it's taking about as bad a path as possible before it even starts. And that sucks, but it's worth noting.
Okay. All right. I see it. I see the vision.
I hope I'm wrong. I do hope I'm wrong. I mean, that's one of the most rootable programs in the sport right now. So I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
I don't know. I kind of think the first year of the drop down will actually be okay for them. I think that there is a significant long tail issue. And yeah, man, you'd rather have Damian Martinez. But I think that you could get by in year one in the Mountain West. Or the Mountain West. What are we calling that, by the way?
I don't know. The Mountain West +2. It doesn't really roll off the tongue.
No, it does not. But now I don't know if I have a full and total pushback on that, but I do think you may. I think you're playing more of a hold stock game here, a long tail game here. I'm not ready to dump all of it right now, but next May is a different story.
All right, we'll see. Lay one on me.
All right, dude, watch out for USF. It's a hard league. It's a hard league, right? Tulane, UTSA, Memphis clearly steps ahead of them. But that offense, USF's got. Alex Golish, former Tennessee offensive coordinator, comes over and brings that offense. Everybody knows how I feel about it as far as the pro prospects. But on Saturdays, we know what it can do. That offense can be add water, instant results. And over the course of the season, that offense got better because that Byron Brown, they got a quarterback, is a serious player. A serious player to where I'm pretty surprised he's still at USF. Serious player.
Yeah, it's bleak to say, but you're right. You're right. Like the best G5 quarterbacks are at high risk of being plucked, especially when you take look at Jaden Mayava, USC now from UNLV. For
my money, he is the best G5 quarterback. I mean, I find me a better one. Michael Pratt's not in school anymore.
Frank Harris not in school anymore.
Pavi is not there. Like I'll take Byron Brown for my money. Now, yes, that offense might have been one of the worst in college football in some respects. Todd Orlando's the offensive coordinator there. It was pretty clear they didn't really know what they were doing on defense last year. But if you've got a defense,
Todd Orlando's the defensive coordinator. I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry,
I think you verbally typoed. Yeah, but I looked while you said it because I was like, did he change sides of the ball?
Sorry,
what a thing that would have been.
Todd Orlando at defensive coordinator there. Yeah, they need half a pulse on defense, but if they have half a pulse on defense, that offense, I think, is going to be name your number on offense, and that defense just has to have enough. And you're going to have a team that can seriously, I don't want to say contend for the league. It could be tough, even though SMU's not there anymore. It could be tough because of Tulane and UTSA and how good they are. But I do think USF's going to be right there, man. I really do.
Yeah. Their last 5 games of last year included them scoring 50 against Memphis, gave up 59, but
tough.
48 against Charlotte and 45 against Syracuse in an absolute ass kicking in the Boca Bowl. You'll recall that was a game where Syracuse had a coach change and a lot of guys weren't playing, but USF took that thing real serious. They hadn't been to a bowl in a while, and that was probably the biggest ass kicking of bowl season. The kind of thing that you take something away from going into the next year. I like it, Richard. I like it. I agree with you that I don't know about winning the league, but I think that fun rising teams, like a big time ESPN Plus watchability team this year, I'm 100% down with you on USF. I think it's a good take.
There's going to be a 56-53, double overtime. It isn't over till midnight on USF's count. I guarantee that.
Yeah. They play anybody of particular note in the non-conference? Oh, Alabama again in Tuscaloosa. Man. And Miami.
You will recall how that Alabama game went last year. Don't think we're going to get a redux, but
probably not. But if you wanted to really get edgy and you wanted to say that USF will be Kalen DeBoer's ULM, I could hear you.
It's out there.
It's the kind of take that if someone wants to get behind it, that's a perfectly reasonable kind of edgy thing to put out there in the offseason this year.
Can't fire all the bullets. Can't fire all the bullets in May. You got to save some for the American Conference.
I'm holding it, but just someone can think about it if they want to. Auburn for me this is going to sound wishy-washy, but this one actually I do not have as strong a view on, but I want to talk about them.
The take.
All right, then I'm going to work through it in real time as we talk about it.
Okay.
So Auburn to me has done everything that they could do to position themselves for a kind of nice jump forward this year, like upper half of the SEC, except find a competent quarterback. Can they make Peyton Thorne back into one? He was one years ago. 2021 was a long time ago. No longer recent. They go out, they get him Cam Coleman, who could be, along with Jeremiah Smith or competing with Jeremiah Smith, the best true freshman receiver in the country. They get an April surprise with Keandre Lambert-Smith, a good team's number 1 or 2 receiver. I would say on a good team, you hope he's your number 2 if you're trying to win a national title game. He comes in April, and he's on this team now. I think I generally am pretty trusting of Auburn's ability to have a good running back, and Jarquez Hunter is still there and does not seem to have the offseason eligibility and suspension question that swirled around him last year. So the skill guys, they've surrounded him well. Auburn's offensive line situation has been a bit touch and go in recent years, and I'm not especially confident, nor do I think that it's awful. I think I'm very much in wait and see mode on that front. But they've surrounded them with good skill position guys, much in the same way that Michigan State did the year that Peyton Thorne was good. So, and I think pretty highly of Freeze's offensive coaching acumen. There's a lot of things about him that clearly we do not think very highly about with him, but he has, in many of his seasons as a head coach at numerous schools, been able to find pretty good quarterback play.
Yeah, I'm not really I'm not really worried about them on offense.
So, like, I think they're going to score. I guess as I reason through it, I think they're going to score. I think they got a lot better on the defensive line. I like group of 5 transfers up. They got a good one, Kieran Crawford, edge rusher from Arkansas State, who had, I think, 6 or 7 sacks last year. They added a couple of defensive tackles. One of them I wonder about more. It's Isaiah Rakes, who was the A&M guy who was then at USC for like 10 minutes. I don't like that type of transfer as much as a guy to rely on if you kind of have like a 5-minute stopover at a school. But Richard, I'll go ahead and I'll say that I think Auburn finishes in the upper half of the SEC. I think that Auburn is one of the 8 best teams in this league. I think I'm comfortable with that as a slightly stretched goal for them.
All right. Okay.
Like I feel it's hard because I don't think the quarterback's any good, but I think that the coach has demonstrated some ability to coach quarterbacks over the course of his career, and maybe in a second year with like a couple of true downfield playmakers on this team, that they can figure it out. The same way that Michigan State did when they had Jaden Reed going deep for him, and they had Jalen Naylor, and they had Kenneth Walker. I don't think Jarquez Hunter is Kenneth Walker, but you understand the general point that I'm making. So, yeah, Auburn win 8 games this year. You know, like let's see a nice step forward. I think it's a reasonable goal for Auburn to win the Iron Bowl this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I'm not even poking a hole in the take. I agree with you and get it. But I mean, like, hell, worse Auburn teams have won the Iron Bowl, or worse Auburn teams have taken Nick Saban's Alabama to the brink in the Iron Bowl.
Very true. So yeah, as we talk through it, yeah, Auburn step forward this year. Iron Bowl's in Tuscaloosa, where Auburn never wins, but the old man's not there anymore. So let's see if maybe this could be a year that you could do
it. This one is there are a couple things. There are a couple teams and a couple programs that I think people rely too much on their history to justify why they will continue to be good. I think Iowa's going to be one of them whenever Kirk hangs it up. I think Ohio State's one of them as well. Not in a bad way. I just think Ohio State's on that list because, you know, they're Ohio State. And I think Oklahoma's on that list too because they're Oklahoma. And I think Oklahoma, I think this awakening is going to be pretty damn rude in the SEC. My biggest thing with Oklahoma, it's on offense, and it's not even at the quarterback position. Look, Bill Benbaugh has forgotten more about the offensive line than I'll ever know, man. But there has been a consistent step backwards for that offensive line since right around the time Lincoln Riley left, right around Lincoln Riley's last year. They've lost pieces. We talk a lot about Colorado as the team to look at as far as if an offensive line can gel. Don't look at Colorado. Look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is exhibit A about whether a portaled offensive line can gel. There's 4 portal pieces and a young player that are going to start on this offensive line this year in front of Jackson Arnold. You know, by the way, you know who Oklahoma's backup quarterback is? This may not come into... You know who their backup quarterback is this year?
Is it like Davis Bevel?
Casey Thompson is their backup quarterback.
Dude. Oh my goodness. I hope he's good. I hope he's enjoying being there.
I do think Oklahoma does benefit from a very senior-laden defense. They're a very old team on defense. That is a cause for significant optimism. But on offense, I don't really see it. And as far as Oklahoma coming into this league, like, I do think that awakening may be a little rude.
It could be. I think 2 things, though. One, I think you and Godfrey were both a little bit blind isn't the word, but you were a little bit understated last year about how good they were, honestly. Like, they were pretty good. Like, they won 10 games, and that was with a bowl loss to a pretty good Arizona team. Like, I think that Oklahoma quietly, and I don't know why it was that quiet, because they won.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, and they won Red River in dramatic fashion.
What a game.
But I don't know that they were properly evaluated last year for what they were, which was a team that was in the title race until late October. Actually, until I think early November, until the first week of November when they lost Bedlam. They lost a game by 5 to Kansas, and they lost a game to 3 on the road to Oklahoma State. Anything can occasionally happen in Bedlam.
Every now and then.
I think that, and we shouldn't really evaluate teams for the next year based on how a 3-point and a 5-point game wound up that year. You also shouldn't, by the same token, say they're going to be better than Texas because they beat them in Red River. But Oklahoma was a top 20 team by SP+. Yeah, you're going into a year 3 now for Venables. Excuse me.
God, is it really year 3? Jesus.
It's year 3. It's got to be year 3, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's year 3. So a lot hinges on Jackson Arnold, who we will talk about more, I'm sure, as the season goes on. I don't know that he will be more productive than Dylan Gabriel was last year, because I also don't know. I think it's kind of an embarrassing hire for different reasons that Mississippi State hired Jeff Levy, but the guy can call ball plays, generally speaking. So who's calling plays for them this year for Oklahoma?
I think it's Seth Luttrell.
He's okay. It's interesting. I think he was there. He either played there or coached there much earlier in his career. It's a homecoming for him. So I also like a couple of things they did in the portal. I think you're right that offensive line gelling in the portal, they are a case study. And especially I think their center comes from SMU, and portaling a center is interesting because of the kind of captain of the line things that he has to do. I liked that they got Caden Woolard from Miami of Ohio. We talked about him when we were talking about how Miami just got rated worse than any G5 program. They got a really productive MAC edge rusher to come and get coached up by Venables there. I think I'm less down on them than you are, is how I'm reasoning through this.
Okay. All right. Reasonable people can disagree.
Yeah, I think a top half of the SEC team that we are talking about as being in the race, which is going to be a new thing this year because there's going to be more teams in the race. But that you're talking about
not even top. Is Oklahoma a top 5 SEC team day one? Because I don't think they are.
I think so. Yeah. I think the only 2 teams in the SEC that they absolutely are not going to be in the league with this year are Georgia and Texas. I could see them being competitive with everybody else.
Okay. All right.
Personally.
All right.
And when I say competitive, they could beat Texas. I just think Texas is going to have a better year. I mean, that happened last year.
Know what happens in that rivalry. Good night.
No, it is a funny thing, and I think we're going to have to get used to this. But last year was good socialization for it, even though it was still the 14 playoff. Head-to-head means less than it used to. There will be teams that will beat rivals and will have noticeably worse seasons than them and get less far than those rivals. And that's going to be increasingly possible as the format of the sport changes. Richard, the national champions. Michigan's interesting. Michigan's always kind of interesting, but I think this offseason in particular, the QB situation is surprising, but maybe it shouldn't be. So the word all of last year was that they were trying to build up their NIL operation, and they were trying to walk the straight and narrow a bit, both because of the Michigan brain that we have covered at some length, and because it benefited them to sort of walk the straight and narrow and not court unwanted NCAA attention while they had other things going on in that arena all year. And then another thing at the end of the year that got some press as well. So we started to hear at the end of last year, and we started to see, anyone could see it, Michigan really kicking their collective fundraising into overdrive. And I was personally just of the reading the tea leaves impression that when Jim Harbaugh left, that they would probably be a little bit un-Michigan-like in the spring, and they would go shopping a bit and try and really beef up the year 1 roster for Sharon Moore. Didn't really happen, and I think the most noticeable spot where it didn't happen is quarterback, where they're going to go into this year with Alex Orji, who was the situational, non-throwing quarterback who spelled JJ occasionally last year, Jack Tuttle in his 7th college season. Davis Warren is here and could play. Davis Warren is a former preferred walk-on. I think we should all root for him. Cancer survivor. He's been a spring game darling a couple of times, including this year, and could be their Stetson Bennett. Maybe. You never know, but probably not. That doesn't happen a lot. So I think it's safe to assess it at this point that they're going into the year with massive quarterback questions for a defending national champ. Like, I don't think that a defending national champion has had this bleak a quarterback situation in a long time. And that's with full knowledge of the guys who played quarterback for Saban early on in his Alabama tenure. Like, you really have no idea if there's anybody on this roster who can play quarterback at even a pseudo-competitive level for what Michigan wants to be. Maybe they could, maybe they won't. But I think that means that one of three things has to be true. One is that one of these guys is better than we think, and Orgy or Warren or whoever can actually be good, and they could put together a 10-win season and contend for the 12-team playoff with one of these guys. Two is that Michigan are broke boys, and that the NIL fundraising is not going well, / they just don't really want to play at that level and aren't willing to tamper and don't want to do the things that a lot of their fans have talked about Ward Manuel kind of holding them back from doing. Or three, and I think this is probably what it is, the coaching change was just not very organized for them, and it couldn't be because of when Harbaugh went to the NFL. And so they did not have a postseason portal window where they could really do anything. The uncertainty around their head coach's status vis-a-vis the Chargers in the NFL prevented them from going and getting guys. And then by the time you get around to spring, the collective deals are signed. There aren't great quarterbacks available, and there definitely don't seem to be. Like, the biggest quarterback news of the portal was what? Like Rutgers in Minnesota doing a little quarterback swap at the end of that window. And so I think that's probably what it was that Harbaugh just left too late, and they just were not in a position where they could do a quick fix at quarterback. So I don't think it necessarily says anything. But for that reason, I'm kind of leaning towards Michigan having a pretty serious step back here, like where they don't really contend even for the 12-teamer and are just kind of 1 year victims of the timing of their head coach leaving. How do you feel about that?
Remember before the season last year when we sort of played this game and we were like, who's your favorite TCU player? Well, congrats. He doesn't play for TCU anymore. It's not that bad for Michigan, especially on defense. They actually do bring much of the good players on defense that they had last year. Some of them are in the draft, of course, but yes, they do bring back some good players on defense. On offense, however, unless you're a big Colson Loveland guy, your favorite Michigan player on offense ain't coming back. So
Donovan Edwards.
Or Donovan Edwards. So
yeah.
If you had problems with Michigan's offense last year, which some of us did, they will remain nameless, and we will continue to search for them as long as we do this podcast. The step back may very well be coming on offense for them. So I am not bearish on Michigan because I think that defense is going to be everything you need. And I do think they're competently coached and will be able to figure it out to an extent. But I don't think Michigan is going to be in the national championship game. I am not. Do you think Michigan is going to be in the 12-team playoff field?
No. I think they will often be in it going forward. I think the Sharon Moore hire was right, but I do think, and this happens, I do think that they are positioned to go well backwards this year because of the timing of Harbaugh rolling out the way that he did and how much brain drain he took.
Yeah. It's not, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think that they will be, Michigan is one of those teams that is going to be a prime ranked 12th or 13th, going into the Ohio State game, and then you lose to Ohio State, you're out, kind of thing.
I do think that the case that they might is just that they might make the 12-team playoff, and why I don't want to dismiss it is that you mentioned there are still a lot of guys here from that defense who are really good players, but also just the way the Big Ten shakes out. There are going to be 3 Big Ten teams in the playoff. You can pretty much take that to the bank going forward. In fact, I think here I am revealing that all of the offseason playoff arguing, I forget if they actually put the 3 Big Ten buys into effect for this year, or if that's part of the negotiation package.
That is also not happening, by the way.
Oh, fantastic news. You see, at some point I just started, even though this is my job, I was just like, I'm tired of this shit. And I just stopped listening to Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti arguing about playoff format. So little look behind the curtain.
Your life is better for that.
Yeah. There are probably going to be 3 teams from the Big Ten in the playoff, at least. I think just given the way that the committee is likely to view the SEC and the Big Ten, it's just hard to imagine that at least 3 don't get in. And I think Ohio State is an absolute shoe-in. There is a 100% chance that Ohio State is in the 12-team playoff this year. I think that Oregon is very, very, very likely to be good enough to be in that event. And then, there's nobody else in the Big Ten who is strikes me as a sure thing to be better than Michigan. Washington has its own, even exaggerated versions of Michigan's problems, arguably. USC has upside, but also has immense downside that we've seen. Penn State has big questions, particularly around who's going to catch the ball and if their quarterback is any good.
You know, the funny thing is they don't play Penn State. They don't play Penn State this year.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, keep that in mind.
That's really interesting. Oh, really? So they're just going to kind of be on separate tracks, and it's like a race to the finish where they don't touch each other. So I could see it. I don't think Michigan's going 6-6, but no. I think they're going to be a caliber below. And the saving grace is that even in this tougher Big Ten, there's not a lot of. There's only 2 teams in this Big Ten right now that really look like definitely absolutely good. So, chance to grab that 3rd spot that the league's that you have a pretty good sense the league's going to get. Absolutely, I think Michigan is in that conversation. That felt good, Richard, didn't it, to talk about actual football?
This is the time when I think you can really begin to ramp up your levels of copium. Either way, whatever you need. But it's time to ramp it up. We've still got 2 months before we're sort of really 0-60 into team preview mode. That happens after July 4th. But we can at least take we can at least see the season coming into the fore. Right?
Yeah.
In the distance.
Yeah.
On the horizon line.
Yeah. Look, the national championship was almost exactly 4 months ago, and the start of the season is almost exactly 4 months from now, as we record this on May 7th. So the long night is halfway done, and games will be here before you know it.
Our long national nightmare is almost over.
Thank you, my friend. To our subscribers on Substack, we will see you very shortly with bonus content there. Mentioned it earlier in the show. Looking forward to sharing that with you. There will be a single wing later this week from Stephen Godfrey, who is out on assignment, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon.